Hey there everybody. Today I'm going to talk about some characteristics of LCGs to see if you might like LCGs. So, number one is the tactical aspect. With LCGs, now there is a difference between competitive and cooperative, but both are kind of similar in that there's a constant feel of the opponent, either a player or the AI, ends up making a move that causes some destruction to your side of the board or gives them an edge, and then now you are in some ways reacting to the particular scenario, the particular faction, and how that faction that you're playing against has a certain play style and agenda to a win condition that they are going for, and you having to understand the threats to that and respond in a tactical manner. Now, the tactical is certainly the biggest portion, but you as well have a particular winning condition for your deck that you're trying to get to as well. So that's not to say there's no strategy. You're trying to get through your deck of cards, find your tools that are going to help you accomplish that, all while playing for that strategy, while playing around what your opponent's trying to do. And so in that, based upon what cards you get, based upon what cards they get, what they are putting out and what their threats are to you, you have to try and meet that strategy different for each different, not only faction you play, but within the same faction you could have a combination of different cards that end up giving you different threats that you have to kind of plan for. So in that regard, if you aren't interested in that tactical back and forth nature as much and having to constantly react to what your opponent's doing, as well as understanding that your opponent's going to be doing some pretty mean stuff to you that's going to cause your sometimes everything to fall apart, other times cause you a major setback by killing a guy or destroying something of yours, then I would say that you need to be careful with these games, because that's really what they're trying to accomplish. The second thing is deck construction. I know this is one of those things that is challenging, it's time consuming, because you might just be one of those people who just wants to play a game versus having to spend 20, 30 minutes, maybe an hour researching, putting together the appropriate cards so your deck actually can function appropriately. Because if you went in there with just a bunch of garbage cards, I don't care how good of a player you are, your deck is not going to be able to compete against decks that have been put together well. So there is that whole aspect there. Deck construction is a major part of the strategy, because you are really assessing a card's value compared to other cards, the value of it compared to its cost and some of the other setbacks of it. Whatever it is, you're having to compare that and then say, does this fit within the deck I'm trying to build, and be one that will mesh with those to really take advantage of those combos, take advantage of that compression, right? So when you take an action and you get a bunch of different bonuses for that action, you are ultimately improving your action economy. So all of that ends up equaling you having to do that kind of work. Now, there are options to this that can take away from it. Most of the games on my list, minus Warhammer Invasion, do have online databases of decks that's been built by other people. And that's pretty much what I do. It's called net decking. And I end up doing most of my deck construction via net decking, because I'm not the best at analyzing cards and identifying their value and really understanding those combos and all. So that is an option there to take away from that, as well as one of the games we're going to talk about, Star Wars the card game. It uses a objective set system where you take an objective and you get the 5 cards that go with it. So you build 10 a deck with 10 objectives and a 50 card deck from that. So you're ultimately making 10 decisions, and they've kind of already done a lot of those decisions for you. So that, for a person who's not super into deck construction, but they would think they would enjoy LCGs, I think that would be an excellent one. It's one of my favorite parts of that game, which we'll get into later when we get to ranking. All right, number 3 is the luck factor. Now, all these, the averages of luck balance out, right? You can get completely screwed over by your initial draw, and maybe you draw more cards and all your good cards are at the bottom, or the one card that you need to put together a combo could be at the bottom of your deck, and that does happen sometimes. But for the most times, for the majority of the time, the law of averages works out, and those cards are interdispersed throughout your deck relatively evenly. So one way you can get around the luck factor to some degree is most of these card games have a 3-card limit. So you can put 3 of one card in your deck. That means there's a lot better chance that you end up seeing that card more often as well as sooner in the game. So that is one way to mitigate that luck. The other thing is that in each of these games, there's 2 different concepts here. There's recursion. Recursion allows for you to, after you have a discard pile, be able to recur some of those cards that you've already used to be able to use them again in some shape or form, right? There's different ways that works out. And then another mechanic is called tutoring, which allows for you to go maybe search the top 5 cards of your deck, the top 10 cards of your deck for a character, an attachment, an event, or some of them just let you go in to your whole deck, find that card you're looking for, shuffle your deck back up, and then add that to your hand, and now you can use it. So there's all different formats of how tutoring works, but ultimately those 3 things together can really help that deck consistency. And so a lot of people, when they're deck constructing, the tendency is you want to, have all these different tools available. So you put 1 of each card in your deck, but a lot of the best decks will have 3 of almost every card in their deck and a couple of 2s and 1s, which they call tech cards, which will allow for them to be able to have certain things for certain factions that they might need in certain games. So having 3 of each card really helps that consistency and puts only, a group of cards that really work well. So all of that to say, luck is a factor in these games. So if you don't like that luck, then these games you have to assess that. But I will say the fact that if you draw these cards, you do have an understanding. I have 3 of these cards in my deck, and I've already went through 20 cards. I should be coming up on one soon. So it's a lot better than every time you take an action you have to roll a dice to see the outcome, because there's no way to identify any type of chance that you couldn't just roll a fail every single time. So there is that involved. Now, the next thing is the chaos, and I've already kind of touched on this with the tactical, but these games really are made to be kind of an adrenaline rush, right? They're kind of like poker style games. They're not poker, but poker makes you take chances. It makes you kind of push your luck. It makes you make tough decisions. And ultimately, you end up getting that feeling of adrenaline in those. And whenever you do something really big, it gives you, like super excited. And when your opponent does something bad to you, it really gives you that sense of, oh no, feeling. And so there is a lot of that happening here with those dopamines and things like that really gives that sensation in people who enjoy these games. That is what they enjoy about them, and after you play them long enough, you become more prepared for all those things, so that kind of goes away. But I definitely remember when I was first playing a lot of these games, there would be a lot of kind of like, on the seat of on the edge of your seat type experiences, and it still happens from time to time, especially if you're playing for something. If you're just playing at a kitchen table, it's one thing, but if you're actually playing to win a store championship or something like that, there's a different feeling. And again, you can play most of these games online, and there's tournaments and things like that, so that you can still get that feeling. But ultimately, this game offers that kind of adrenaline rush type experience because of the ebbs and flows. And again, we'll get into the nuances of that as I rank these games, as to kind of their flows are different. Some of them have major explosions, ups and downs, and other ones have more of a a lighter curve of that, to where good and bad things are happening, but the game kind of feels a little bit more, you still feel like you're in it whenever some of those bad things happen. And finally, I just want to talk about cooperative versus competitive. Again, a lot of these things I'm talking about are going to be from the competitive standpoint, because the competitive side of the house, meaning I'm playing against an actual person, not necessarily that I'm playing to be in a tournament. I enjoy those. I enjoy those better than the cooperative version. But in the competitive version, they're certainly made to last, somewhere between 35 minutes and an hour. Usually, there's one exception to that, and sometimes it can go a little bit longer than an hour. But they're relatively short games, and you are ultimately going back and forth. Excuse me. You are going back and forth with your opponent to really like boom, 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 constant action and hitting each other. And so, but in a cooperative game, you've played cooperative games before, the AI can be mean, but if you enjoy that a little bit better, maybe you can check out the cooperative games in this line here and still get some of the other benefits of an LCG, such as deck construction, luck, a little bit of chaos, certainly chaos still, and that tactical nature. But with the co-op versions, there's also the opportunity to play all of those solo. So if you're into solo gaming, you can get that LCG feel by yourself, so you're not worried about, I got to get this pack to be competitive with these other players, I got to collect it all. You can ultimately just collect what you want and enjoy just playing the content you have as many times as you want with different scenarios. So that is what an LCG, really a CCG is as well, and any collectible card game is. You're continuing to add more and more cards at a much more rapid rate than, say, in a game that just does expansions every couple of years, and you are now working with those cards to put together the best deck you can and learn how to pilot those as the meta. A meta meaning kind of what the whole card pool offers as the best solutions and different threats and things like that. You are now morphing your play style and your decks to meet the new challenges that are placed by new cards coming out. So if you're interested in them, then follow along with the ranking of the LCGs. But ultimately, I don't want anybody to go out and spend a good bit of money, because these are more of an investment than board games. And so I wanted to kind of share with you if you would even be interested in LCGs and collectible card games in the first place before we got started here. So, all right, next time we're actually going to rank the LCGs here. I know I've said that a couple videos in a row, but I kept on kind of wanting to present some introductory material here to kind of set the stage before we get into those. So catch you next time for the number 6 FFG LCG on my list.